Kia ora koutou katoa. Welcome to Business is Boring. This season, we're talking to people who are the best of business. And today's guest, Brianne West, will be known to many people, has been on the podcast before to talk about her journey at Ethique, and is back making Incrediballs, which is going to do for the soft drink industry what Ethique did for the shampoo and home care industry. What we're looking to chat to today is a little bit about something that Brianne's been a perfect example of, which is building goodness into your business model. So just doing well in business makes the world a better place, which is an option that's in theory, available to every business, but not many businesses take up the mantle. So to chat that, the process, and where Incrediballs is today, Brianne joins us now. Tēnā lovely to see you.
Kia ora, how are you doing? It's been a while.
Good, thank you. Hey, so, everyone will know you from the Ethique journey, and I think there's a really interesting link between that and Incrediballs too, with this essential insight, right, about not having to shed loads of water all around the world. Tell us about how that insight hit you and how that led to the start of that business.
One-trick pony. Honestly, one-trick business pony. I finding myself saying the same sentences in the same order. Look, it's never made any sense to me, and it's not just the drinks and the beauty industry. It's so many more industries where we make really inefficient choices on the basis of making more money. In the beauty industry, water is called profitole, right? So you do need it in certain instances, absolutely, but it's mostly in a product to look like that's high value to a consumer. That's madness because it is therefore a really high environmental cost. And I've always just thought these things are really bonkers. Why do we do so many things so stupidly? And I could go on ad nauseum on how many things we do stupidly, but we will not.
And when you did start that, it was
400 years ago.
It was so unusual in the world. And now every chemist, every supermarket, every beauty store has hard shampoo bars, hard bars that would otherwise have been water with a concentrate in a plastic bottle. And that is amazing, right? But when you started, it was not the norm. What kind of things did people tell you when you were starting out? And how have you been able to prove that wrong?
Everybody said something along the theme of it isn't possible, people don't want it. One of my favourite quotes is from a buyer of a big New Zealand company who said, good luck building a market for a product like this. And a year later, we were there, either second or third bestseller, just saying. Everyone's a skeptic until you prove them otherwise. Isn't that a badly paraphrased saying? It's because you're just trying to do something differently, and some people genuinely don't believe it's possible. Some people don't want you to do it, whether that's an insight into their lack of confidence or whether they don't want things to change, whatever. There's all sorts of reasons people do all sorts of things. But I was told people didn't want a product like a solid bar, so I was told the format was wrong. But I was also told that it was 100% impossible to run a business in an ethical way that made money. And certainly there was a lot fewer examples around then than there are now. But, Patagonia's been around for, I have no idea how long Patagonia's been around for, but it's a shining star of an example. So it absolutely is possible, but I imagine so many startups or founders rather, are put off because they're told that it isn't doable.
And it's so logical once it's done. It's it's even better for retailers because you get higher value per square centimetre of shelf space because you're not having to sell the diluted product and the like. It's more convenient for people not having to renew their purchases so often. There's so many reasons, right? There's no plastic bottles.
People don't care about the sustainable aspect so much, but it's nice you focused on the convenience for them.
Yeah, and that's really interesting, right? People, they definitely, in the order of needs, you need the product to be really good and desirable and sustainable, right? Rather than sustainable in the top place.
Which is funny because I always marketed Ethique as sustainable first, which I objectively knew was a problem, but I seemed completely incapable of changing because it was really the only thing I really cared about. When people ask me about, I don't know, what does it do for your hair in terms of marketing terms, I'd be like, oh, yeah, it's smoother. I knew, but I just found it so hard to care. And I sort of found a lot of the conversation around the beauty industry very frivolous, which is not a fair comment, but I used to. So, yeah, but you're absolutely right. Sustainable products will not sell themselves.
And you were able to kind of match performance and do things that people never thought you could do with
match, you mean?
hard bar. Better performance and do things people never thought you could do with the hard bar. And then also one thing along the way was you kept having to upwards revise your goal for how many bottles you'd save, right?
Yeah. Well, back in the kitchen, 1 million by 2020 sounded stupid. And then we hit 1 million, I think, in 2018. And, I can't say 10 million. That's too many. Okay, we'll tentatively say 10 million. And then we hit it in, I think it was June 2020. Cool. Now can we say 100 million? And we did, but I don't see that in too many places anymore. Well, I think they're at 41, so 100 million is not far away.
Yeah.
Pretty cool.
And that's so awesome. And so having been through that journey, tell us about the journey into selling that and moving out of that business. As it's something that when you've done something that's kind of impossible, made a new category and been very much at the front of it, what kind of other feelings and what goes through when you think about selling and moving on from a business?
So imagine you cloned yourself and then sold yourself to somebody else to control at will. That is a super graphic, probably over the top example. But it's kind of what it feels like because Ethique was a manifestation of my values and personality and even my favourite colour. And to hand it over to other people who I believed would keep the values and they are intrinsic to the brand, so it'd be silly not to. As far as I'm aware, they absolutely have. That was like chopping a limb off for a long time, and it's still a little bit weird to think about now, which is actually why I don't pay attention to what they're doing. I stay far away, and I don't follow on social media or anything because it's just weird. You can't control the thing that I am not going to say gave birth to because that would be weird and that would be trivialising actual birth. But, it's part of you and it's not anymore under your control. That was weird. It's taken a very long time. For the first year, so we sold it, majority sale in 2020. I stayed on as CEO for 2.5 years, stepped down April 2023, and then sold down the remaining shares a bit later. And that 6 months after stepping down was kind of horrible. Also kind of why I started Incrediballs and Business with Better and a few other things as distraction, because that's actually the healthy way of dealing with things is to just push it down.
Push it down and keep
move
moving.
Away. Yeah.
Move the energy to go forward.
Yeah, a textbook is what therapists recommend to do, I imagine.
Yeah.
But it got better, I think. It's still weird.
And, I mean, it must be remarkable when you can go into, like, any store in the world and see, the brand you started, but also the other people who've come to the category. Because,
yes,
making actual change in the world is not all going to be one business, right? If you can do that.
No. My favourite saying that used to annoy a few of my business partners was, I want to put a bar in every shower, but it doesn't necessarily mean I want to be an Ethique bar. We cannot save the world on our own, I think. That's how many times I said that. Pretty sure that was word for word. You're not. And mission-driven businesses are pretty good at collaboration. But as a whole, we sort of need to think a little bit bigger than just making as much money as humanly possible for one business. We do need to think these are real problems we need to solve. The more we're finding out about microplastics, the more terrified we should all be. But I think, by and large, we're all just sort of not looking, don't look.
Yeah.
Because it's scary as
well,
shit.
and that was a really big part of Ethique, was removing the plastic bottles in the, shampoo aisle, the soap aisle, the body wash aisle. And that's a lot of bottles. But the industry you're now taking on, tell us about the insight behind Incrediballs. And, if the beauty care industry is like a 2 out of 10 for badness, the soft drink industry is about 100 out of 10, right?
Yeah, it sort of sucks from start to end, really. And I didn't know that much about it. I knew the plastic bottle thing. Coca-Cola is the world's greatest plastic polluter 6 years in a row. I think after them is Pepsi or Danone. Danone being the world's greatest bottled water producer, I think. And most of the bottled water sold is sold in places where tap water is absolutely fine and is held to greater standards and greater testing, which is something people don't typically know about it. So the whole thing is as much smoke and mirrors as a lot of the beauty industry, and I didn't know that going in. But I did know that plastic was infinitely worse. There is no true definitive count on how many bottles are produced just for drinks, but it's definitely in excess of 1 trillion every single year. It's mental.
That is such a big number.
41% of all the litter on your average city streets is single-use drink bottles. And I'm not saying Incrediballs is going to, save 1 trillion bottles, because that's a very scary number, and I don't even know how to spell it. But I do, just to be clear. Yeah. But if we are successful in inspiring people to demand a little bit better and inspiring other companies to do something similar, because there are already like powder sachets and things. This is hardly a novel concept. What is novel is in how we're approaching it, and how we're positioning it, and the green tech, which always sounds so lame when I say it. We are the only waste-free drinks company in the world because we have fancy tech that makes our balls stable, and then you can package them in home compostable cardboard. There is nothing else out there like that. I hope that there will be. That's how you change an industry that really, truly sucks.
Let's dig into that a little bit. It's like, the concept of a capsule that you can drop into a drink takes everyone to Barocca in the first instance, right? Like
yes.
everyone in the whole world. I mean, haven't they done a good marketing job? Yeah. But so that kind of idea, but then being able to make something that gives you the experience and flavour and enjoyment of a soft drink, but without the plastic, the sugar, the bad colours, but also the rest of the packaging problems, right? Because like the plastic bottle's part of it, but inks, wraps, different kind, it's kind of unstoppable, right? So how did you go about getting it so it could actually be in compostable packaging?
Well, long answer to a short question. I've been thinking about this for a long, long time and never thought I'd actually pursue it because I assumed I'd be doing Ethique till I died. And then it becomes such an established business, it's kind of boring. And started thinking more seriously about this. But the fundamental issue, so Barocca is an effervescent tablet. In theory, they are, Incrediballs and Baroccas are the same thing. Just to be really clear, Incrediballs taste way better. Barocca, we used to eat them in class and chomp them, and so you'd spew bloody coloured foam everywhere. It was great. But I don't remember them overly fondly. They're a wonderful supplement. Anyway, so in effervescent tablets, if you put one on a table, it will react with water in the air. That's just how they work. It's like a bath bomb. We have tweaked it, if you like, so that the reaction is delayed unless there is a lot of water, which is when you put it in your glass. So they're just stable. And that's understating it with very clever scientists. I think about 8 years of figuring out how to do it. And it all came together at the right time. We worked with them, created the product, created the amazing flavours, which took so much longer than I thought because taste is way harder than formulation of shampoo. And that is a very long journey and a very short conversation. But the packaging's kind of irrelevant. You could put it in anything. It's the technology in the Incrediballs themselves. And what I'm really excited about is, do you know 65% of people struggle to swallow tablets? 30% of people can't swallow them all. And sure, most of them are kids. But I fall in the 65 category. I can't swallow tablets if someone is looking at me, or if the tablet is on that day too big, even though I may have taken it the day before. There's all sorts of lunacy going on. So I want to expand it into other, like drugs. So as a teenager, I had a bone tumour and I was taking painkillers 4 times a day every day, and I had to go and get a glass and fill it with water in the tap, and everybody at school used to call me a drug addict. It was really great. I would love to be able to make that easier for people by making effervescent drugs more environmentally friendly, but also tastier.
Yeah, because if you think about it, all of these capsules have plastic around them and inefficient models of
pharmaceutical
supply.
Industry waste is hideous.
Yeah.
The supplement industry, hideous.
And if you think about soft drinks, right, which we don't, as a rule, we just kind of live in the moment with these things. But if you think too much about them, there's obviously the sugar and the colours and the flavours, the ingredients that are, in general, not that good. But then the water use is something that we think about water use for water bottlers, but we kind of don't for all of the other soft drinks. But they are just a little bit of concentrate with a whole lot of water that in most instances, they're not even paying for.
No, the licensing fee. I dug into this for an episode a while ago, and the average water company, like Coca-Cola or I won't name any other names, pays a $500 licensing fee for regardless how much water they take. It is unbelievable. And it's often shipped offshore, and it's our own natural resource that we just are not charging anywhere near its value for. What?
It's bananas.
It's
the main ingredient of their drinks by quite a large margin.
So just every facet of how we do almost everything in traditional business as usual is nonsensical and made up.
And so what does Incrediballs have to do to be able to change a behaviour? And this is something that, you were able to change a behaviour for, a lot of people, well, actually, all people who'd never used a hard soap bar, shampoo bar, they changed a behaviour, right? And I remember talking years ago, and you were like, a lot of it was the early community pull before it became kind of mainstream. How do you activate that community of people to be the first pull for a new kind of way to do things?
It's going to sound a little bit mercenary, but you make them feel like they're part of something, right? It's easier to do in a mission-driven business because you are part of ridding the world of plastic bottles or whatever your mission is. And that's why I built Incrediballs in public before the product even existed, and I even knew it would work, which stressed the living daylights out of a lot of my business partners. But if you bring people along the journey and show them the ins and outs and the ups and downs, and you be really transparent, that's how you build a community who care and trust you. And then they are much more likely to not only try the product, but maybe even it's not to their taste or it's not their favourite thing, they'll still tell their friends with a positive reflection, right? That's how you do that. And then that expands into whether you want to do crowdfunding or grow that audience or whatever. But you, as the brand, are going to have a much harder time convincing people outside your initial target audience, if you like, to try a product that is fundamentally very different than their friends are. So you need to activate your community to activate word of mouth really effectively. And there's all sorts of, everybody TikTok strategist is saying, you need to build a community, you need to be real. And it's true, but actually doing that is obviously hard for a lot of brands because they don't know how to just have a conversation with their consumer. And it can be as simple as saying, we're going to have some new packaging. What colour should it be? And you just start asking what seems like asinine, inane questions rather than paying a focus group who will give you an answer that might not be as good. And then obviously you want to apply a little bit of science to that, right? You don't just go full steam ahead into what your customers are saying on social media, but it gives you an insight. And it also, again, they feel like they belong. They had a hand in building that brand. And that's what I've done with Incrediballs, and they are incredibly involved.
And it does mean giving over more control than like a lot of brands would be used to, right? Or a lot of businesses. But it makes so much sense, right, that if you're making something for your customers, that if you get them into the process, it should be something they're going to like more, and especially if you're dealing with taste, which, as you say, the difference between shampoo and drinks, like you either like it or you don't, right?
Yeah, shampoo kind of either works structurally. Obviously, people have preferences, but then there is drinks, which is entirely preference-based. And I've had people, one woman at she told me the other day she dumped 10 of the grapefruit balls into half a glass of gin. Now, I can't begin to tell you how foul I think that would be. She loved it. To start with, I don't like the grapefruit flavour because it tastes like grapefruit and grapefruit tastes like sadness. But she loved sadness mixed with bitter sadness. You can't possibly consider all of that. And then you've got people on the other end of the spectrum who love the cola and want, 10 balls per glass because it tastes so sweet and cola-y and sort of polar opposite taste spheres. You cannot manage that without actually getting your community involved. It was a year ago tomorrow, actually, that we had our taste test party, which is embarrassing because we tasted them on what I thought were great. And the feedback was great. And I was like, yeah, great. But then we spoke to a new flavour house and they made something that's infinitely better. And now I'm really worried that those people will be like, just like those. But it's not. It's a million times better.
Yeah. And I mean, what you're saying there is really interesting in that unlike most products, you can choose to put 2 balls in or 8 balls in. And you don't get that kind of level of, everyone has drunk cordial, so I guess you do with cordial, but you don't get that with
half a Raro packet.
Yeah, with your normal kind of, I'm having a soft drink moment. You don't have that customization at all.
No. And they've gone into kind of 2 camps at the moment. So you've got zero sugar, which a lot of people don't like. And then you've got the full fat version. And there's not a great deal in the middle. as you say, there's not a lot of customization. And I do think that middle spot will be filled by a good couple of brands soon. I mean, Poppy is doing it.
Yeah.
Hollypop's doing it in the States, for example. We don't have as much yet here. We will do. But if you can make it so people can tailor it how they want, because personalisation is a massive, I don't want to say trend, but I guess a revolution in so many industries, it's kind of a no-brainer. But I wanted that because it makes it more fun. You feel more involved in the process. It's a thing for kids. They're kind of fun to watch spin around and make colours. You can make your own flavours. Eventually, I want such a suite of flavours that you can almost make anything you fancy.
Yeah, cool. And just to finish off the part, and we'll come back and talk about kind of designing better into the business model. What stage are you at now with Incrediballs?
Oh, horrifyingly, we're 3 weeks till launch, which kind of, it's fun. I'm almost over it because every 2023, when I started talking about it, it's like, we are launching by the end of this year, 2024, March 2024, December. Now, it'll definitely be Christmas 2024. That is why having that transparent communication is quite good, because they're all like, oh, we're disappointed, but we believe in you. I think, bless their little souls. But May the 22nd is D-Day, give or take. So that works, and we'll see how it goes.
And what does the launch look like for you? Is that kind of retail partnership? Is
No.
it like D2C? Is it community?
Even though I'm fairly comfortable that I know what people have wanted and what people like, it's so much up for debate. And while we're at this small stage, we can tweak a lot. So rather than going to the retailers who are pretty excited about having it, we're just launching online. We will get as much feedback as possible. Half of the first order is emailed for samples, just to throw at people walking down the street. That'll be a good look, won't it? A box of tablets being thrown at people. I might rethink that one. It will almost be an R&D launch, I suppose.
Yeah, love it. Okay, let's come back in a moment and and chat to kind of like how you've built good into that model. So something that, like, you know, obviously with both these businesses, you've been incredibly intentional about is making it so that everything you sell and everything you do adds up toward better outcomes, whether it's environmental, social, or the way you ethically run your business. And, you know, like I said at the start, like in theory, this is available to everyone, but very few people design their business so that everything they do is a net good. How do you go about doing this? And like, you know, you've talked about the launch being delayed because you've had to push so hard to get your packaging partners to get it, or the formulation right, or to get the elements right to do it. So what are some examples of some things that you've done to allow you to design this into your business?
Okay, I always approach things, if I cannot do it in the way I consider the most sustainable or the least impactful, because everything you do has an impact, I won't do it. There has been several times along the Incredible journey where people have said to me, oh, well, we can do this, but you might just want to include a thin layer of plastic on the inside. Consumers won't even notice, which is a statement that really irritates me. So it wouldn't be an impact on your brand. There's always been lots of compromises suggested along the way. And I've always said, at the end of the day, we're here to rid the world of plastic bottles. Of plastic, of single-use plastic. Let's roll that into every decision we make. That's not a complicated one. So when you set values like that into stone, it becomes an easy decision to make. The ball shape, for example, the name Incrediballs is a part of the fun side of the brand. And I have a couple of people that have said, I don't like it because you're talking about balls and they can only be ball sacks. Round things people play with in fields. Not worried about those. Okay. It's I think, having done it before, that it is easy to put a foundation of good in a brand, but I appreciate that it's something you're almost talked out of in those early stages of business.
Like you need to be practical, you need to be sensible.
You do, you can't do both.
Burn the world down, don't have any morals or ethics, and
it
don't
really
trust
is no
your consumers
in between, is
to like care about things. Yeah.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
So few brands trust their consumers to understand the realities of the situation, because there is no such thing as a perfect business. We've gone out there and so we're using sucralose in some of our flavours, and ideally I actually wouldn't want to, because there is a bit of a push against sucralose despite the lack of science that really shows us any concern. So I'd rather not. But to make the cola and the orange, for example, taste like cola and orange, we need to use a really full-bodied sweetener. And we are working on other alternatives in the meantime. But that's a compromise I've made to prioritize, if you like, sustainability and consumer taste over fear, because I believe the consumer can be trusted with the information that actually this is perfectly safe. We've written a whole article about it, provided a whole bunch of sources. And marketing doesn't tend to do that now. They just lead with some kind of fear statement, it's 100% free of this. And I get why it's easier to do, and that's what the consumer expects, or this idea of clean, which is, what does that even mean? Like you wash the dirt off it?
Natural. Arsenic's natural.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Go and lick some radium and tell me how you feel. It's and I think actually part of this building good into your business encompasses everything. So it is your product. You should start with your product. But you also need to look at everything else. So your supply chain is part of your product. But you also need to think about how you operate. Living wage payments, so on and so forth. But also your marketing. Are you marketing in a way that is true and genuine and authentic and actually adds something in as opposed to takes away something? I think one of the reasons we're going headfirst into an anti-science, anti-intellectual world in some places is down to sort of dumb marketing. It might be a bit harsh. And I'm not really blaming individual marketers for it. It's just they're following trends and the way things are going without considering where it's heading. Maybe that's a bit conspiracy theorist.
Yeah. And that kind of world of helping people understand how to think about all of those parts of their business in a more intentional way. I mean, that's something you've made with Business But Better. And also, a lot of the work that you do to advocate through social media, the podcasts, Substack, there's a huge amount you do to try to help people know that this path is available to people. Tell us a little bit about Business But Better and how people engage with that.
I don't know if it was part of that, hiding from the feelings. I just put together, I think it was about 50 videos or so, from everything that's quite small to the target market thing because there's two ways to show people how to do something. You give them how this is how you do step by step, or you show them an inspirational example. I liked the idea of doing both. So you already had Ethique, but there's countless other examples of great mission-driven businesses. But also here is how to go about doing a standard business thing, but with a more ethical lens. There's countless business courses, right? I didn't want, it's free, to be clear. It's not a business course. You just go in and out as you want to and watch whatever you want. It's not a new thing you have to do. It's something you probably already need to go and do anyway. But hey, could we look at maybe doing it less exploitatively? Or how do we look at something in a different way? That's all it is. And I think if we thought how could we do something differently about a lot of the things we do, or why we do the things we do, how we do them, then we'd also solve a lot of problems, because they would just fall into ruts and just do it anyway.
I mean, it's really kind of, first principles and a scientist's mind, right? You look at it and go, what is the reason we can't do this? Like if we've managed to make an extraordinary supply chain out of petrochemical products, like what we've done with plastic is pretty remarkable as a
plastic
society.
Is a wonderful material. We wouldn't have the medical system we do without it. I'm not advocating to get rid of plastic entirely, but
if we thought that hard about some other things, we could make them really amazing too.
Well, we've taken the most endurable material and made it into something single-use just out of convenience and laziness. And I get it. We're all busy and we're all tired and we all want stuff at times. And you're not a bad person if you buy single-use plastic. But the companies that profit off it and don't have to pick it up, I think they're kind of bad people.
Yeah, it's wild. And externalise all of the impact and privatise all the profit.
And when you mention to people that maybe or companies that profit off destroying the planet should pay for it, people are like, oh no, but the person who had it at the end is responsible. No, they're not, actually. Well, a little bit of responsibility, sure.
I mean, we can all make good choices and stuff, but I really resent the idea of a carbon footprint, because it was an invention by petrol company obfuscation efforts, but also I've never knowingly owned shares in an oil well. I've never knowingly been part of, maybe, I'm a Simplicity KiwiSaver member, so I now know that I don't, but who knows what my first KiwiSaver did. Anyway, I've never profited off of fossil fuel exploitation, but as a person, as part of the political economy, we still subsidise fossil fuel production enormously as a society.
To the tune of $7 trillion a year. What the...
And as individuals, the most useful thing we can do for the climate is advocate not to subsidise and then to have some kind of reparations for the privatised profit that's come out of these things. But instead of those conversations, which are actually things we can do in our political economy, it's come down to, how many car trips did you go on last year? I think it's mad.
Yeah, it's all guilt-driven, and how can you make people feel bad about it? And then, of course, somebody who talks about something online becomes a target for all these people saying, oh, but you have polyester clothing.
Yeah.
And it's just so unhelpful. What is it, you're eating your own tail? Is that the phrase? Where the left is eating itself is the phrase you also see. But it's very engineered.
And it atomises us. It means we don't have a shared voice because it all becomes about individual responsibility, where it really is a collective situation.
You are absolutely responsible for your own decisions, but you are manipulated way more than you think you are. The system is not set up for you to be less impactful. So let's maybe change the system. People are like, you can't change the system. Guys, I have a surprise for you. We built it. Probably can change it.
And there's a heck of a lot of people who are still profiting off the status quo. Like if you're not involved in anyway. So yeah,
we could go on forever. I got told I was being too snarky the other day on social media, and I thought, well, you have seen nothing.
It drives me absolutely bonkers. Tell us also about the work. So that's so cool, like that the work that you do with Business But Better is free for people to access, right? And like you see a lot of, and not throwing shade on any particular person who sells a course or something, like, maybe you have great skills and it's very important you share them and you should get paid for your work and cool. But there's a lot of courses from people who haven't done things like Ethique that you have to pay a lot for, and there may be dubious upselling things behind the paywall as well. But then you just go and like make it all available to people for free, which is really cool. And then as another thing, in Spree, tell us about that.
Oh, it's kind of a bog standard investment. We take a more, not necessarily operational, but quite a hands-on strategic, which is sort of antithetical wording. But we do like to get quite involved in terms of guidance with our startups. And they're just product businesses that are just trying to use business, again, to make the world a better place. It's not narrowed down to one particular industry. And we're just very, very particular about it. It's a lot of fun, actually.
And so that's like an investment fund where you then get in and help the businesses to grow if they're doing things that are like can be a good business, but also can be good in a business.
And it's very much dependent on the founders. I find a lot of founders are very idealistic. You've got to have that balance of both. The only reason Ethique was ever successful was because I had a team, in particular my COO, who was on the realistic, pessimistic spectrum, where I was hardcore idealist, and we met in the middle, and it made a good commercial decision. A lot of these mission-driven entrepreneurs are too far on the other side, so that's what we try and spend a bit of our time is. We will make sustainability or your social cause the core of the decision-making, but we need to make sure that it also still makes financial sense, or you can't do this.
Yeah.
Because you can't make impact if your business isn't around.
That's something I like, because it's very well known now about the importance of diversity of opinion if you're bringing in unconventional opinions. But sometimes having some conventional opinions in the mix also can be useful when you're living in the world.
Yeah, it's not a bad thing to rely on a little bit of old school advice. I don't like old school advice personally, and I'm forever saying, don't take anyone else's advice. No one knows what they're talking about. No one's ever done it before. You are the best person to learn. But having opinions from people who've been there before is not a bad thing either.
If someone who's been there before and knows the system and believes in what you do and wants to support your mission is bringing advice in, that's also very different than someone who knows nothing throwing stones about how it won't work, right?
Yes. And look, I have lots of opinions about the startup world and accelerators and stuff, because I think some of them are not what they set out to be. And I think they all started from a place of good intention. But I think there's an awful lot of really, really bad advice in the startup world.
Yeah. I think a huge problem there as well is that we have such an immature capital market in New Zealand that venture capital is kind of seen as the only place to go. And so people go to accelerators with ideas that just aren't venture capital ideas, really. And they're not built for the venture capital approach. And so it ends up being hard for people to invest in it. And if they do, it's bad for the founders often, because that growth is so often hard to do if you're running good product businesses. And it doesn't mean you got a bad business. It just means you went to the wrong kind of capital partner.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think a lot of that is that people, because we have so few places for people to go, people are going down the wrong path, maybe?
Yeah, well, you'll hear it. They'll say, we need to raise sort of 3 or 4 million from VCs, and they're like a week old and they haven't got a project. I'm like, okay, what are you going to spend that on? They said, we're not sure yet, but we've been told that's the number. Okay, so who told you and why would you raise that? Because, and they don't know, but they don't know that they don't know because that's what they're told by people who, again, best intentions, but it's because that is what's seen as success. The best businesses in the world are the ones who bootstrapped the whole way and didn't raise much or any capital. They're freaking amazing. We don't celebrate them. It's bizarre. If you raise money, that was our biggest headlines was when we raised money. That was arguably the easiest bit.
Well, it's bananas because the only way to get conventional coverage is funding or fuck-ups. So
true.
We should be celebrating more serious milestones. Not everyone, of course, there are some good reporters out there, but the easiest way to get into the paper is to do something terrible.
And funny.
Yeah.
Funnily terrible. Yeah.
I just want to come back to the work that you've done to kind of share the mission as well, because it's not easy, right? Like putting yourself at the front of things. I remember talking, years ago, and you were like, "This is not what I wanted to do, but this is what is required to share what we're doing is to turn up in these places." And I mean, you're absolutely excellent at it, but it wasn't, from what I understand, what you had set out to do. But like between the podcasts and the Substack for the kind of footnoted, this is the actual science version, through to the TikTok or the Reels for the, here's your snackable bit of sense. I mean, it's a full content, full court press, right?
Yeah, it's a lot more work than I anticipated. And I keep adding more because I'm like, wow, we should do this.
Yeah.
And my team are like,
it's a full media business.
It makes no sense to do as much of the content as we do, but it is important to me outside of conventional business to keep trying to push back against misinformation spread, which spreads 4 or 6, one of those, times faster. And people are putting themselves in harm's way. They are, in my opinion, voting incorrectly. That's terrible. I shouldn't say that. You vote how you want based on correct information on the values that matter to you, right? But don't vote for someone based on something that isn't true. That's really important. Vaccination rates, another example, due to misinformation from one of the highest people in a government in the States. It's important that people keep producing this, and I am in the financial position to be able to do so and carry that, because it's obviously you'll also be aware that these are expensive undertakings, and I'm not going to monetize or put ads on it because I don't want to. But I'm in the position to do that, so I kind of feel like obligated. Ups and downs, whether I enjoy it or not. I don't know why people send death threats for talking about how maybe EVs don't cause infertility. They don't, just to be really clear. But people are. Education is really important, and we have more information at our fingertips with our phones than ever before. But we are less correctly informed about things. And I'm not saying I am the oracle of truth, but I do a lot of research and get a lot of experts in and try and pass that knowledge on, because, again, I have access that other people don't necessarily, and a real love for science, and I just quite like rabbiting on and stuff.
I mean, it's a wonderful thing to do, because you could also look at it and go, well, you've already built one and in the process of building another business that, are net positive for the world. And you could, go, hey, I've done my bit there and I do my bit with this, and maybe I won't put my head above the parapet, so I won't receive death threats and I won't have those things. But yeah, it's such a important thing to have a science-backed, sustainable voice, as there's a lot of conflation that happens in the world, right? And I think it's easy to go, whole foods are good, is true, but not everything that is made through science and has a number behind it is necessarily bad as well. And it's very hard to run both lines, right?
Yeah, and I get why so much of this makes sense logically in your mind. Natural equals good because we're natural, but as you pointed out earlier, it's not the case. Everything is complicated. Almost everything is more complicated than we think and more nuanced, and it's very hard to get that across in a consistent manner. So that's all. But I do sometimes think, why am I not diving on a reef somewhere?
Yeah.
While we still have reefs, because, 84% of them are currently bleached beyond recognition in the worst bleaching event ever.
Well,
Sorry.
it is really good when you combine both of them and talk about reefs while
Yeah, I
showing us
snuck
the
that
reef.
in there,
That is the best. And just as a couple of final thoughts here, I'd encourage anyone who is interested in understanding how to intentionally design good into their business model to go to Business But Better, which is very easily found by Googling you. But what will success be for you in this mission? So Incrediballs, I can see a world where every single workplace, instead of having a fridge full of aluminium cans that have been shipped around full of liquid and blah-de-blah, you have a cool little dispenser, and then you pick your flavors and then you pop it in your drink and you have your nice little treat, and people carry around with them a little pack. And that seems to me to be way more normal than lots of things we do these days. Carry the big thermos flasks around the whole time, which never have anything hot or cold in them. And I don't know. There's so
People
many
are a lot
things.
stronger now, carrying these.
There's so many things we do that are kind of weird. But yeah, the whole world of soft drinks, the fact that it's become almost the symbol of a little treat when it's so harmful. I see a world where this kind of convenient consumer little joy moment could just become a total new normal. What will success be for you? When will you know that it's working?
Oh God, that's a hard question to answer, because I wouldn't even know if Ethique was a success. I don't think I have a measurement, because as soon as you hit something, I imagine this is very common with so many people, once you hit something, you think, oh, well, that was a stupid goal. It was too small. I want this one. You're always chasing the next thing. Again, that's probably something a therapist would have comments to say about. But if it went from being, oh, what a weird way to drink something, to, oh, yeah, I'll give that a nudge, which is what shampoo bars went from. It became a more mainstream thing, and more brands did it, and there was more availability in supermarkets. I think that's a market success, because that's a mark you've changed the industry, which comes from consumer behaviour, which is so hard to change, as you would know. Right? That would be a big thing if it became almost part of the vernacular.
Yeah.
Which is a big goal, I suppose. But for globally, big goal. New Zealand, a little bit easier to sell with.
Yeah, but it totally could, right? You look at some things like Pals. Pals has become basically a verb. They are amazing,
And yet you don't see their marketing super in your face. They have done a remarkable, almost a stealth job.
Yeah, so it is totally possible, to do that with a great product that people enjoy and starts to mean something.
Yeah.
And I can't wait.
Adorable branding.
And adorable. I can't wait to see where you take it next, as it's it's so magic. And then if you think about all the downstream effects, you start with plastic, but then lower sugar, better flavors, all of these things. There's a lot of people who consume a lot of these things where, just changing what it means to have a little treat could have incredible downstream benefits.
See what you did there. Yes, there is an awful lot. I've sort of learned from my mistakes. I tried to throw everything at everybody with Ethique. We do this, and we're climate neutral, and blah, 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 blah. And people are like, oh, Jesus, okay. Trying to focus on the plastic-free aspect, but mainly it's about taste, and it's about the fun and the community and the brand. But there's all these other aspects to it too. Sugar-free, the flavours are all natural. Not that that means anything, but it is something people look for. So when we say it's 100%, our flavours are natural, this actually means this comes from this. Ordinarily it would come from this, which isn't a bad thing, but this is what you want.
Yeah.
That's the education piece I was talking about.
Well, is that one of the areas where that is quite a useful conflation? Because if they are all natural and, and approved, they're probably going to be good, while there are some not great colours and flavours floating out there?
I'm not a food scientist. I'm not qualified to speak on colours. Certainly the likes of tartrazine or Red 5, which is in the news at the moment. It's not banned in the EU, by the way. They're not. I know that that's currently going. It's also not really, the colours aren't being banned in the US. They're asking industry to remove them, which is hilariously adorable. Good luck with that. But there is certainly some interesting science behind some of these things that would indicate perhaps we should consume less of them until we know more. I just think that actually people dislike these colours because of where they're sourced from, petrochemical colours, and the sourcing does sound a little bit horrific. But actually, if you read a really interesting book, if you really wanted to, it's by Thomas Hagar. It's the how they I guess discovered antibiotics. They were working on colours from basically coal tar dyes, and they started tweaking with, and they ended up with something called sulphur, which was the first antimicrobial. And I assure you, people weren't turning down sulphur on World War II's battlefields because it came from a petrochemical. Anyway, that's totally off topic.
No, it's great. And like that, but that is the complexity that we're dealing with, right? And it is funny when you talk to people about it and you go, well, what do you think lollies are? Or chewing gum? And they're
chewing gum is literally, it's a horrendous source of microplastics. Please stop chewing gum.
Chewing gum, it's plastic. You're chewing plastic in your body. It's insane.
No, it's, yeah.
Yeah, but people, like, I don't know if people have thought about what it was. When I found out, I was so surprised. I guess I thought it was like rubber or something.
I thought it was some kind of plant resin.
Yeah. Nah, all plastic, just chewing plastic. Cool, well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing the story so far. And yeah, can't wait to see, the impact this is going to have with the launch. And if anyone isn't following the journey, head to Incrediballs and sign up as, it's a magic thing. And thank you for sharing it.
Thank you very much. And Simon has also been involved in developing it too.
Oh, no, the tiniest bit. It's it's such a pleasure, and can't wait to see what happens next. And thank you to everyone who helps make this happen, like our producer, Te Ahe Butler, and to you for having us along in your ears and listening. And if you do like what we do, please do rate and leave a review. It really does help. Kia ora.
Mm-hmm.